Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Celestia with RPHQ Roleplay Headquarters. And if you're interested in going to Gen Con this year, you are in the right place because I'm here with a bunch of awesome people and we're going to talk about our experiences at Gen Con, what we're looking forward to, what to expect if you've never been to a convention before, and basically everything that is awesome about Gen Con. I am here with my ever present friend Malfunction.
Hello.
My husband, Redan,
Hello.
and our special guest, a friend who is a True Dungeon and Gen Con veteran, John.
Good evening, everyone.
So, Gen Con actually was my very first major convention, and I went last year. It was the best time I've ever had. Mal has been to quite a few. He's kind of a professional con goer at this point, I think. And like I said, John is a veteran. So we have a lot of new and fresh takes and expertise on the board, and we want your questions. So hop over into the Twitch chat and ask us as many questions as you can, and we will do our best to answer them. There's a lot of information that's still not known yet, so we can't guarantee that we can answer everything for you, but we will do our best.
So, Celestia, where do you want to begin?
Well, I made up a list of all the things that I thought, this is all really important, and especially for a noob like me, I had no idea whatsoever what I was really getting into, and I constantly was looking for different little blogs and lists of what to expect when you go to a major convention or what to expect at Gen Con, and they were all pretty much the same, and about half of them were actually helpful. So I made up a list of things that actually seemed like things that would be helpful to discuss. So, for example, the number one thing that we had issues with was figuring out parking, because apparently that was nowhere near as difficult as I thought it was going to be. But considering we weren't familiar with the area, that was definitely going on the list. And I just kind of made a list of little tidbits and things that I wanted to share for everybody. So we're just going to go down the list and talk about what to expect and everything that you're going to find. And hopefully everybody can give some good insight and we'll get a lot of questions. But I guess the most important thing is how much it costs and the pricing. So if you haven't actually registered for Gen Con yet and you're still thinking about going, these prices that are on the screen right now, these are pre-registration prices. They haven't said for sure that I've seen as to when actual costs are going to change. But if you register right now today, these are the prices that you're going to pay per day. Or I'm going to hand it over to John, and he can tell you what it's like to volunteer for a True Dungeon and get a free badge.
I'm sure going to try. Excuse me there. So, volunteering for True Dungeon and getting a free badge. Is that correct? Let me make sure that I heard everything that was just said.
Yes. I've also got it up on the screen. That is the information that I had. Feel free to elaborate and explain that for people.
You got it. Okay. So, as a True Dungeon volunteer, you are like what you see there on the screen is actually pretty close to the truth. You got a lot of different levels of stipend, which it depends on what you end up doing, but yeah, it is up to 250. The great part about volunteering for True Dungeon, actually, aside from the really great event that you get to help put on, of course, is that you do get 4 free nights in a hotel, and it's one of the hotels that's fairly close to the convention center itself. A couple of them are connected, and they're very short distances from the convention itself. The full-time volunteers get a free badge and a free hotel. If you're part-time, it's going to end up, but you get the badge as well, but not necessarily the hotel, but the badge you do get. But it's it's a really great deal, and definitely a great way to see the con if you are, especially if you've never been and you're not sure what you think of it. But like, it is really a great way to not only get to see the workings of True Dungeon, but to see the con itself for a considerable discount.
And we're going to talk a lot more about True Dungeon a little bit later, because a lot of people are probably thinking, what the heck is True Dungeon? Everything I know about True Dungeon is from you, because you've told me all about it, and this year we are planning to actually participate in one. But last year it was just a little too much because it was our first time, so this year we're definitely planning to do the new one, the sealed quest one or whatever it is, so hopefully that will be awesome, and we'll talk about those in just a few minutes. And I've got a little link there. If you want to volunteer for True Dungeon, you can click that link and it will tell you all about it.
We do have a question from our viewers, namely, one of them asked, what was the best time to arrive at the convention? And I think that's a very interesting question. Would you like me to grab that?
Yes.
Okay, so arriving at the convention is largely going to be dictated by what you want to do while you're there. Most panels at the convention aren't going to start until once the convention itself is going. The earliest ones you're going to see are going to be at about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And depending on whether or not there are any celebrities at those panels could dictate whether or not you want to arrive even earlier to get to that panel itself. If you're attending the convention more for some of the games and RPGs, those typically start picking up more at the 10 o'clock to noon sort of time frame and really start going later in the day. Then Gen Con is a little bit more tame compared to most conventions I've been to, but there still are several more adult-oriented activities which start occurring later in the evening, kind of starting at about 10 o'clock p.m. going forwards into the early a.m. hours. Although it does actually close down at a certain point, unlike some conventions, which I've seen just keep going all evening. So largely, to decide when you want to arrive at the convention, you need to take a look at your schedule and decide what's the first thing you want to do during the day, and just kind of gauge it from that. I really do recommend having a schedule and considering getting to your event at least 15 minutes early so that you can get a good spot in line.
I'll go ahead and add in too, if you are one of those people who you're waiting for something that's going to release at Gen Con and you have to be there, you got to be there early, because
2 hours at least.
Yeah, because as soon as those the exhibit hall doors open, it is like insane the amount of people who rush those halls. And I recommend really familiarizing yourself as much as you can with the interactive map, which we'll talk about, the programs. Figure out where the booth you want to go to is in the exhibit hall, which is kind of hard to adjust to. But figure out where it is and then run like your life depends on it, because you have to wait in a line, and then some lines they'll like give you a ticket where you can come back later. Redan can probably describe that a little bit more, because he was going to try and get a game that was coming out there and it sold out like immediately. So I don't know if he has anything to add.
Nope, you took exactly what I was going to say. So
I'm
moving on.
sorry. He is definitely our exhibit hall expert because he basically lived there over the course of the 4 days.
Which is very easy to do at Gen Con.
Yes.
And it's likely going to happen again this year.
And we'll talk more about the exhibit hall later because it's not just a matter of buying things there. So we'll describe it in more detail in a little bit. Okay, so
Yes, it will be very crowded, Javine.
oh yes, it is going to be crowded.
But on that note, it is going to be incredibly crowded. But from our experience last year, people are generally really good about, like, if they bump into you, they will apologize and they will be really polite about it. I don't think I ran into a single person last year that was a jerk.
It's not Dragon Con crowded, and it's not Comic Con crowded. It's a very busy con, but it's very well structured. You'll be fine.
People seem to know exactly how to go. Sometimes people have to cross, and it's a little bit overwhelming. But really, when Chris says everyone was polite, that's totally accurate. Everyone we met there was super friendly. I didn't meet a single rude person the whole time. Everyone's amazing. I was blown away by how courteous and genial everyone there was. And we even mentioned it to the guys who do the Looking for Group comic. I made the comment to them about how nice everyone was. He said everyone at this con is fantastic. It's the best con we go to friendliness wise. So everyone is your friend. Everyone's there for the same reason. So you meet great people and they're fantastic. On a scale of New York to Canada, Foxy, they are definitely Canada polite. With less A's and less maple syrup.
You can find poutine in some places, though.
Very possibly. So these are just a couple of tips that I've got up here. You should definitely get your badge either the day before, or if you can sign for it because it requires a signature, have it mailed to you. We went the day before to get ours, and the parking spot that we got was in a parking garage. It was $10 an hour, and the first space we found was on like the 6th floor. So by the time we hustled over, got our tickets or our badges and tickets, and got back, like walked around a little bit, got back to our car. By the time we got down, we had like 1 minute left before we had to roll over to a 2-hour parking space. So we're going to talk about parking. You don't want to get anywhere near a garage unless you're staying in some hotel that's going to validate your ticket. But if you can get down there the day before, that's great. If you can't sign for a mailed badge, that's what you'll want to do. The interactive map is your new best friend. They will have a program for you. The program last year was absolutely insane. It was a novel and enormous, and it weighed 1,000,000 pounds. And the interactive map that you can get online from the Indiana Convention Center is a lifesaver. You can just touch it and tap it and find what you want to look for, and it will help immensely. And we, being noobs that we were, fortunately someone stopped us or mentioned to us at a booth, did you get a coupon book? And we're like, a what? And they're like, there's coupon books. And we had no idea, but if you grab those, they'll be near the registration area. You can grab a coupon book, and it will have actually coupons for just straight up free stuff at booths or discounts at booths. So you can get coupons. I think we got a free dice using the coupon book, and you can can get all kinds of little memorabilia. And I don't think we found out about the buttons till the last day. There are buttons that you can collect from different booths, from different volunteers and employees. So look for those, because we didn't know about them until the last day, so we didn't get to collect all of those.
No, I don't know if they will continue doing that because but they did have a special 50th anniversary one, so I don't know if they're going to continue having stuff like that. It might have just been for the anniversary, but who knows? We'll keep an eye out, and if we find anything, we'll pass that along.
There was several things that went on last year for the 50th anniversary that may not go on this year. For example, they had a mass vow renewal. And yes, Javine, those would be limited buttons. So they only have so many, and people go around and collect them. You had to be so many places, and then if you got them all, you got the special 50th anniversary one at the end. But it stops at like 2 o'clock on Sunday, so it's very challenging to get all of those.
Real quick, we have a question in the chat from Foxy about the attendance numbers. Mal, do you happen to remember how many people were there?
Last year, there were recorded over 60,000 people in attendance.
There you go.
But they're very much spread out.
Yeah, because there is, there are multiple places where stuff is being held. You've got the main convention hall that's got like 5 bajillion wings, or more accurately, like 4. And then you have the Lucas Oil Field, which is basically, a football field and a stadium that's covered, and it's full of stuff to do, as well as the game library. That's the word.
Yeah, we'll be talking about the different buildings involved as well in just a bit. But yeah, there was a lot of people there, but it's not as overwhelming because everybody's kind of spread out. It's not dense. To give you an idea, if you've ever been to a smaller convention, we actually went to a small convention last month with Javine, and we constantly mentioned to him how it was horribly designed, and Gen Con has way more people, and it's way better organized, and there's a lot more room to move around, and that is true of just about everything. So it's a very nice, smooth convention. I love the way it's run, and it definitely left an impression on us enough that we want to come back again. So parking and lodging, we already talked a little bit about that, and John mentioned that if you volunteer for True Dungeon, they can help set you up with that. There are several hotels that are connected, like he said, to the actual Indiana Convention Center. So you're going to have those as an option, or you can stay a bit out and then just find parking on that day. Last year, we chose to do the prepaid parking pass because we really didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how much price gouging would be going on, so we just decided to go ahead and do that. Last year, it was a little bit less. I think it was about $16 a day. This year, it's $18 a day for, or if you do all 4 days, that's $62. Alternatively, and I think, Mal, you can let me know if you did this or not, just finding lots. They have people all over the place with signs. It's like $15, $20 a day.
Using the parking lots was very convenient. That's the parking solution I personally recommend.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And really, the prepaid parking, you're still just parking on a parking lot. With that, you do have a shuttle service that you can use. So that was really beneficial, especially when you're exhausted, because the parking lots are a few blocks from the actual convention. So it was really nice to have the shuttle, especially after a really long day. But you're definitely going to want some really comfortable shoes because you're going to be everywhere. So that's what you're kind of looking for.
Sorry, yeah, I can say that's the way. My friends and I that have been doing this for several years, we've started using the prepaid lots. It's really nice if you're going to be there multiple days to kind of, it's sort of set it and forget it option where you can put it there, you can put your car where you're going to go, and then you're in the downtown area. You don't have to worry about it. That's definitely, I concur on that. It's a really convenient and useful way to go. And Gate 10 I've actually used, and it's not too far. It's right on the other side of Lucas Oil, and not too far at all, considering.
That, and they have surveillance cameras, so that's handy. Even though they're open lots, they're pretty much the same as the other parking lots where people just hold out signs and say it's $20 a day. But they do have surveillance cameras, and they have shuttles, and they have people who go around. So either one, you're going to be looking at about the same price per day. Less people kind of up the prices after last year's turnout. That's very possible. I think Mal and I both, and Redwood, we actually stay with friends that live in the area and commute in to the actual area, the downtown area. So you can usually find hotels on the outskirts. The way Indianapolis is designed, you can get downtown from almost anywhere within 25-30 minutes. So it's pretty convenient. You can find something outside the area and drive in and not have much trouble at all. Otherwise, hotels are very expensive. Good luck.
Foxy, to answer the question that you just posted, he asked, was last year's turnout less? The answer to that question is we're not 100% certain. The posted turnout was simply 60,000 plus. In 2016, there were 60,819 people attending. In 2015, there were over 61,000 people who attended. So it's kind of hard to say definitively. Attendance does tend to fluctuate a little bit. I expect that the attendance is going to be pretty significant this year because there are a couple of rather very well advertised premieres that are happening this year, such as the premiere trial of the second edition of Pathfinder, which is a very popular role-playing game system. I anticipate that's going to draw quite a few people.
I'll say this too, and I'm not certain exactly how it all works, but I know that they sold out of passes last year, and I'm not sure if they had capped passes in the past, or if that was a specific thing to control population for the 50th. I don't know, but I think they did sell out last year, and whether that is, they sold out because they set a limit, or they sold out because they were at capacity. I don't know. I don't really know how it worked, but they did say that.
They do hard cap the passes, and yes, they did sell out last year.
For the shuttles, I know that the shuttles for Gate 10 will go from parking lot to convention center, and I believe they'll also go to the hotels. I'm not 100% sure.
Gate 10 shuttles will pretty much take you within reason anywhere you need to go after you've paid for your pass. Like they were pretty good to us. We went, several places that weren't off. They were a little off the beaten path. So I know they'll go, a little bit out of their way.
Welcome to the chat, Penny.
Penny.
All right. So what's our next point of conversation, Celestia?
We're going to break down what Chris was saying earlier with the actual information of the buildings. Because I knew it was in a convention center. I didn't realize that it was literally all over the entire area. So I didn't realize. That's
actually a pretty common strategy with larger conventions. Most conventions that I've been to typically have the convention itself but spread between a convention center and several local hotels.
And that's about how it is here too.
Yes.
In the convention center, like Chris said, that's where the bulk of it is. But we also have Lucas Oil Stadium, which has things, and there's an underground tunnel that connects the two, and there's stuff throughout that tunnel as well. And when you go from the convention center to Lucas Oil, as soon as you get in there, that's where True Dungeon is. And of course, there are lots of events and workshops and things like that that they have at the different hotels and meeting rooms. So you can see everything that they offer. It's pretty enormous, and they have, as last year they had 19,000 individual events. But that means every single game, every single run of the True Dungeon stuff, all of the workshops, crafts, everything, seminars, panels, movies. So that it counts every individual event, which we'll talk about later as well. And this year it looks like it's not going to be much less. It might even be more because that list is enormous. All right, John, you're in charge. You're going to tell us about True Dungeon. What the heck is it, and what can we expect?
Well, that's a big question. What is True Dungeon? But I think let me start off. Here's what I usually tell people who have no idea what True Dungeon is, and it's kind of if you have any experience at all with role-playing games, tabletop role-playing, or anything like that. What I tell people is that True Dungeon is kind of like a tabletop role-playing game, but it's full scale, and you are the miniature. So you are basically playing a tabletop role-playing game in a one-to-one scale. A lot of times, if you're a dungeon master and you've got people around a table and you tell your players, you walk into a room, there's a table in front of you, and there's a half a dozen crystals laying there of different colors and several pedestals around the room. What do? Well, in True Dungeon, you walk into an actual room, and there's an actual table with actual crystals and actual pedestals, and you yourself will manipulate those puzzles and try and figure things out. It's kind of it's part tabletop RPG. It's part walk through haunted house. And now that we have the escape rooms that are so popular, it's kind of like that. Although we were kind of ahead of the trend on that. We were doing this before they got big. But it is a 7-room, 2-hour dungeon crawl, essentially, where you yourself are involved in a full-scale production of this dungeon. That's it, kind of in a nutshell. What you can expect is, from the time you get there to the time you walk out of the back end of the dungeon, it's a 2-hour experience. You don't need to know anything going into it. You get all of the training is done in game. And so you're shown basically how things work. You can see some of the pictures here. That this is kind of an example of what you're going to see walking through the dungeon. You'll see some pictures of some players as well, and kind of the way the atmosphere you can expect. And the floor is literally lava. Yes, it was a great time. That you have no idea how many the floor is lava jokes we had. It was so much fun. I was really impressed with this particular dungeon. The design was just beautiful. These pictures were taken by actually a friend of mine who volunteers and contributes and plays as well, and he took some gorgeous pictures of it. So that's pretty much it. Basically, I mean, there's so much to how it plays and how you actually participate. Like I said, you get trained on it when you're there, but in general, it is a 2-hour tabletop role-playing experience that's full scale. That's my short version. I'm more than happy to answer questions and clarify things, but I'm sure we'll talk about it. We can go forward from here, but that's it for me. So
as we're going through it, we're solving puzzles, and there's no dice, right?
Well, not entirely no dice. So here's the basics of like the kind of rooms you'll see. There are puzzle rooms, which you've seen some pictures of those. You see on the screen right now the beholder. There are combat rooms, and these rooms are there will be an NPC, either a costumed actor or an animatronic or a puppet or some kind of thing that you'll interact with. Combat isn't done with dice so much. It's actually a kind of shuffleboard style game where you have I'm gonna get into tokens, but your equipment is all on poker chip size tokens. That it's your armor, it's your weapons, it's your consumables, anything like that. And so you'll take your weapon token and you slide it down this board, and your goal is to hit numbers on a board. I wish now that I had included a picture of a combat board to give you an idea, but it equates numbers to those dice rolls. Like if you get a 20 would be a very difficult spot to hit on the board, and so it's kind of like shuffleboard, and there's a very interactive and kind of style there where if you knock somebody's token into a higher or lower number, that changes their attack. So there's a lot of strategy and a lot of thought that goes into how you're going to actually do that. So yeah, you've got your combat rooms and your puzzle rooms, but the only die that really gets rolled, your DM for the room will a lot of times roll a die for a monster that's attacking, just as a straightforward die roll, a big D20.
Javine would like to know what happens when he dies. Oh, if he dies.
I think you had it right the first time.
Yeah, depending on whether you're running a basic normal difficulty or a nightmare difficulty, there are different difficulties to run. But now, in the old days of True Dungeon, when you died, you were escorted out. That was back in a long time ago. But that's where it started. Nowadays, if you die, whether you die in room 1 or whether you die in room 7, you don't have to leave. You still get to go through the dungeon. You're considered a ghost. So there are tokens and certain things that will allow you to interact with the party and participate in puzzles and things like that. But in general, if you die in a room, you are still going through the dungeon. You'll still get to see everything. You'll still get to see everything happen, but you're a ghost at that point, and you don't get to help fight, except in certain circumstances and things like that.
Well, that's good to know that you're not completely out, because that would be a real bummer.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no it would be kind of a letdown if you died in room 1 or 2 and didn't get to see the rest of it. And that's part of the reason it's the way it is. We want the players to be able to experience everything.
Now, people don't have to actually dress up, correct?
No, that's correct. Okay. I see that kind of a companion there. Foxy says how much role play is actually seen in these games. We've talked at length about this just amongst ourselves at the event a few times. Like, True Dungeon isn't really like a LARP, a LARP being a full-on live-action role play, and I don't really classify True Dungeon as a LARP. I would say the reason being, if you're at a LARP, you assume a character. You may be in full costume, or you're almost always in full costume. You become that character. You interact as that character, and you do the game, and that is the game, right? In True Dungeon, as I said, it's more like a tabletop role-playing game. You have a character. It's on a sheet around your neck. You make decisions for that character. That character's stats come into play when you're fighting, and so forth. You are really not required to, although you're really not required to assume that character's role. You can dress up or not. Some of the best parties are in full regalia, but also there are a lot of people who never dress up. And both are acceptable. It's kind of it's kind of up to the players in the groups. I myself have run in costume and out of costume. But yeah, it's totally up to the players. The players can be as included as involved in the character as they want to be.
Now, when I had looked at this before, do we get to make our characters in advance? Do we have the option to just pick up one when we get there? I know that they also offer like True Dungeon 101 little free panels and things like that as well. So what's the character creation like?
The character creation is the characters are pre-rolled. Okay, so they're at level I think 4 and 5 now. Like there are level 4 versions and level 5 versions. You are you get to your coaching area when you are getting ready to play, and you will select the class that you want. You choose the class, and the character's pre-made for you. From that point, you will use the tokens that you've gotten. You'll get 10 tokens with a ticket. So when you run True Dungeon, you will have 10 tokens there to use to outfit your character however you see fit. And there's a good deal of trading around and talking amongst the other players in your party to equip your characters out the best way possible. And the coaches are there to help you do that. So you have the good equipment. You can at least got a weapon, and you've got some armor, and you've got the tokens that are appropriate for your character. And so then you have your typical classes. And if you want, I can do a little brief talk about what the classes are and how they work. But that's it. The characters are really rolled for you, and your coach will talk you through how to play them.
Excellent. Now, the tokens are a huge deal, and you'll even find a booth on the exhibit hall floor with tokens, and it is one of the most popular booths. They are a really big deal. And can you use those tokens in the games other than the new sealed quest?
Yes, the tokens, they've kind of taken on a life of their own. I think it's pretty amazing. There are people that show up to True Dungeon and all the cons, and they have carts full of tokens, and they buy, sell, and trade, and it's a fantastic, neat little market. We have our own little NPC shops that just pop up. It's a blast. But the tokens are. Yeah, they're persistent. You can use them year to year. They're usable no matter what. You keep them. You use them unless it's a consumable like a spell or a potion. When you use that, it's gone. But yes, your weapons, your armor, your gear is all persistent. You can use it in any dungeon where it applies. Of course, I mean, if it's underwater, you wouldn't be able to use certain things that are exclusive to only above water, things like that. But yeah, they're usable. And the sealed dungeon this year is kind of a new thing. I'm kind of excited about it. But that is, it's essentially like a sealed deck game. You get in there, and you can only use the tokens you get in your complimentary 10-pack. So yeah, but tokens are an amazing phenomenon. I'm always amazed by it.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I wanted to do it last year, but we were kind of limited on our time and our budget. So this year we're only unfortunately going for 2 days, but we are definitely going to try and make time to do the new sealed event and at least play a part in one True Dungeon. Does anybody have any more True Dungeon questions for our expert?
Javina asks, can we do the dungeon multiple times? And Foxy asks about volunteering.
I think I can address both of those. Javine's question, yes, you can do the dungeon multiple times. There are, you can do the same module multiple times, but this year we have three main modules. They're all different. They tell a complete story overall, but they can all be done in kind of any order. They're self-contained, and they all do tell an overarching story. But yes, you can totally do a repeat. Now, I will say this: you get experience as a player, and you get gear as your character. Your character doesn't really advance like you do. When you do a particular dungeon module, as a player, if you survive, you'll get experience, or you'll get experience as much as you survive. And so if you do that dungeon a second time, you won't get that experience again. But the other modules will provide experience that way. So but yes, you can do them more than once. Some people do that so that they can, kind of get a broader perspective on the way things work and all of that. We have people that do that. The second thing about volunteering. Volunteering for True Dungeon is, I think, I may have said this before, I think it is the best it's the best thing, the best volunteer experience out there. Now I have limited experience with other stuff volunteering, but when I've spoken to other people who've done it, True Dungeon is an excellent volunteer experience. And you know, if you end up doing a full-time volunteer shift for True Dungeon, your badge is paid for, your hotel is paid for. It's you know, and it's like working a job at the con. You do spend a shift every day at the con. You will over at our website tdvols.com. You can fill out a profile. And the way it works is there's a basic profile that you fill out, and then as the cons are announced and as we add them to the site, you can volunteer for specific conventions and do a profile for each of those. And so as we need volunteers, and as the volunteer coordinator puts that together, puts the schedule together, they will accept. Thank you for putting the link in there, by the way. They will accept, you know, people out as they get them. A lot of times it's first come, first serve. A lot of times we have specific things that we need, but it's really, you know, it's really up to them how they put the schedule together. But yeah, it's great. I definitely recommend trying it out, because it's a really great experience to see how things go together. And a great group of folks, like from the owners on down to the volunteers, the regular volunteers. It's a great group of people to work with. We have a whole lot of fun doing it. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. Qualifications, I see that like follow up there. The qualifications, it really is, you know, there aren't any specific qualifications I can think of off the top of my head, apart from you have to go actually put a profile, you know, fill out your profile and volunteer. But you know, all kinds of people do it, and the thing about it is it's a volunteer driven event. So everything, and I say this, like anything from folding curtains all the way up to operating the final boss in room 7 as a puppet master, you know, anything in between, you know, the building, the tearing down, the organizing, the running, there are dozens and hundreds of people behind the scenes. So we need you.
Plus, you get all that free awesome stuff, like a free Gen Con badge, and you get your housing and such kind of taken care of. So it is a great way to get started.
Oh yeah, and I will say, yeah, the swag, there is, you do get a volunteer only token, and it is a token that is exclusive to the volunteers. That's not part of the normal set. Only volunteers get it, and you know, it can be, it's not only a useful token, but it can also be quite a valuable token. So it's something that not everyone gets. It's you know, it's a pretty cool thing.
And if you don't want to volunteer this year, but you're thinking about doing it for another year, they definitely have a nice little volunteer informational area there. I think it was just underneath the Lucas Oil Stadium. They had a big area with tables with people answering questions, and they can answer more questions for you. You can sign up and get more details on volunteering there as well.
Absolutely, and on site, and I'll say this: you don't necessarily have to be, you know, have a ticket and be in the event to at least go and see the front end, our storyscape and our shop area there. That's all open if you have a Gen Con badge, so you can kind of see it. And if you have questions, you can find anybody with a True Dungeon shirt on, and they will either be able to help you or find somebody who can answer your questions. So we're all really excited to meet new players. It's you know, definitely something you want to come and check out.
Excellent. I think you answered questions that weren't even asked, that you've enlightened us deeply. So I'm very much looking forward to it, I know for sure. Foxy is interested.
Yes, we got another one.
And Foxy is kind of close, so he doesn't have any excuse. No excuses.
I mean, I drive halfway across the continent to go to this con, so take from that what you will.
It's definitely worth the trip.
this is pound for pound one of the most enjoyable and fun cons that I've been to. At this point, I've been to quite a few, but Gen Con is like this, like beginning to end is just this. It's a bunch of gamers playing games. Really, it's joyful. You get into more like conversations in elevators about the shirt you're wearing, or you see somebody in the hall who's dressed in a particular shirt or costume, and you have conversations with. It's so much fun. I can't recommend it enough. And
Smith?
I'm sorry, I would like
No,
to
no.
address Penelope's comment there real quick. Um, the very first year I went in 2009, that is literally why I went, because volunteering made it possible. I was like, we were like, wow, you're telling me we can go to Gen Con for like not nearly as much as we would have had to pay. So it's a great perk to see the con, and it's a great way to get in, and look around. So
That and your badge is included, correct?
that's correct.
That badge gets you in just about everywhere. And the only places it doesn't get you into is like special VIP places and events you have to have a separate ticket for, unless it's a free event. So you have that badge, and when you're not actually working True Dungeon, you have all these awesome places that you can check out and see things on your downtime.
Absolutely. Unmitigated access to one of the finest gaming events in the entire country.
So now you're probably wanting to know, where all can this badge get you? This is exactly where it can get you. It can get you in the main exhibit hall, the game hall, and all the places around it. There's actually the convention center itself, the open areas outside of those exhibit halls. You don't even need a badge. There's all kinds of people there, news crews, people who are just from the area coming and taking pictures of cosplayers. But these are the places that you need to actually get into with your badge. Like I said, Redan is definitely our exhibit hall expert. He can answer any and all questions about what's in there, including the games and such.
Maybe. Just depends on what your question is.
Oh, Penny did have one more question with the True Dungeon first. When you volunteer, do you work every day or do you just work certain days?
Actually, I think
It looks like.
Cypher's going to answer that question there. But yeah, sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my button.
You're fine.
It happens to everybody.
I can't see. Okay, hold on.
As predicted, everything is going up in flames.
This is all John's fault.
No, we're good. I'm good. It's all good. It's good. No, it's okay, Cypher. Not a problem. I need all the help I can possibly get. But yeah, what he's got there is true. There's several different sort of categories of volunteer, and they will all demand different sort of amounts of time and at different times. So you can sort of tailor your profile when you sign up. You can sort of take care of that and tailor it to what you want to do, and they'll try to put you in where it best fits your schedule. Yeah, Cypher and I have been at this together. We started exactly the same time, and we've done this a while at this point.
Well, Penny, you could probably tailor your profile like he said and see what all they offer. I should put that link in there again, just in case.
Well, I guess if there's no more questions, we should probably move on to the next little talking point here.
Because a big part of why you are going to Gen Con is to play the games and to spend all of your money.
Isn't that the truth?
They've gotten really good at that last one.
I too am quite good at it myself.
Yeah, we came home with considering we had a very small budget, we came home with a really big stack of games, and we played the crap out of them, and they were all fun. And the best part is, you can test most of the games, and you got to test a whole bunch of games that we didn't buy, but it gave us a good idea of what to expect. So, how about you tell us, Redan, a bit about actually testing the games out on the exhibit hall floor versus the game hall and the tournaments, because I think you were probably the only person who even did a tournament.
All right, so pretty much in the main exhibit hall is where they have everything that's for sale, all of the vendors set up there, and it's not all just for selling. Some of them are exhibiting stuff that is coming out, stuff that's in development, and then you just have to just kind of walk around and see all the different kinds of things, and it's going to take you forever if you want to see everything, and you're probably not going to be able to see everything you want to unless you have all 4 days and you play them meticulously. And even then, there's just so much to see and so much to do. It's insane. Well, let me see here.
Foxy asked about current games and versus older games. There are older games there. There was one booth in particular that had like first edition D&D books, and it was really awesome to see some of the older things. There was one booth that had just walls of bookshelves with a lot of different RPG guides and books. They were really, really cool. So you're going to have a mix of old and new. He asked about PC games.
I don't recall there actually being any like video games. This is really mainly just tabletop, card games, board games, stuff of that nature, role-playing games. They do have an arcade that's basically one of their events. So I think last year it was like $8 or $6 or something for like an hour, and you could just go in. It's not very big. It's got a bunch of old stuff, some kind of not really new stuff, but more recent things. And you can just walk around in there, and everything's set to free play. And so if you want to do video game stuff, there's a little bit there, but for the most part, this is really just card games, board games, and stuff of that ilk.
There was a game that was in beta that Mal and I played.
Oh,
And-
that was the Pathfinder game.
We
Wow. Oh, God.
Okay, so we were not impressed. We really kind of struggled through it. I kept giving him this look like, are you having trouble with this too?
I don't remember what Gen Con specifically
Gen-
is for.
It's the Geneva Convention. It was at Lake Geneva originally.
It started in Lake Geneva. Yeah, up in that's where it comes from.
It was
Actually-
originally a bit more focused on wargaming. The convention was actually founded by Gary Gygax himself, who was one of the people who helped found it. And
Yeah, I think it
was-
started in his house.
Yes, it did.
That's
Yeah, we probably should have talked about what actually Gen Con was at the beginning, huh?
I
Maybe.
can talk about that if you want.
Well, before you do that real quick, if anybody remembers seeing that large, giant-looking creature from earlier in the stream on the slides, that was actually from, I believe, True Dungeon. And next to that, there was a setup of like basically a memoriam for Gary Gygax and like everything that he had done, including his a replica of his wargaming setup, which was basically a sandbox that was on a table, and it was pretty awesome.
It was incredibly awesome. It was, like he said, like a little museum put on by like the Horticultural Society, and it was in the Lucas Oil Stadium. it was fantastic. There was so much information and so many awesome photos and pictures and original documents. It I'm sure they won't have that this year because it's not a special occasion, but it was fantastic. I wish I had more pictures from it, but I'm sure you can find some out there because it was really something. And that, what Mal will talk about a little bit about Gen Con, will probably explain some of that as well.
Yes, by all means, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
I know it's all good. Just as a quick, brief summary of Gen Con. Gen Con originally started as a wargaming convention that was kind of Gygax's first love. He himself made a war game called Chainmail, and I can't remember which edition of Chainmail it was, but in one of them, in the back of the book, he included a supplement that had some optional rules for fantasy elements to be included in what was otherwise basically a medieval combat simulator. That's kind of the thing that he was into. It wasn't super popular originally, but then a college student named Anderson picked up the rules at the back of it, and he really liked it, and so he ended up kind of taking it, and he made I want to say it was a 5-floor dungeon that he threw out the idea, okay, instead of controlling a whole army of units, you're just going to be one guy from the back of the book, and we're just going to go through this ruin. We're a little squadron that's separated from the main force, and we're just going through this ruin. And his friends had a lot of fun with it, so he brought the idea to Gygax, and that ended up evolving into Dungeons and Dragons. So that's kind of the history of Gen Con, and it's in and of itself sort of intrinsically connected to the evolution of wargaming into role-playing games through Gygax himself. And so that's one of the more interesting things about the convention, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely, and it's really easy to see how wargaming and such, rolls over nicely into your turn-based games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and stuff.
And how it's not a horrible recruiting service for the devil,
Speaking of recruiting services for the devil, a Gen Con tradition that everybody has to try. They show the officially licensed by Jack Chick himself movie Dark Dungeons, the movie version of his tract that started the Satanic Panic, and it is hilarious, and I highly encourage everybody go watch it, because it is a parody, and he did not realize it.
That's pretty funny.
It is great.
But back to where I was before I started rambling, completely lost my train of thought. The main exhibit hall, where a lot of the vendors have demos set up, specifically just so you can try out their games, and it's really, a marketing point for them to try to sell you on it, but it gives you a really good chance to try something before you buy it. They don't have every game they sell most of the time. Like, I went to, I wouldn't say the Capcom booth, but that's not really it. It was, they did the Street Fighter fighting game, but it's cards. It's a Street Fighter module for it. And I went and did a demo of that, and they sit down with you, and it's usually, depending on the type of game it is, if it's just like a one-on-one, then the person from the booth will sit down with you, they'll go through the rules, and you'll usually play an entire match of whatever game it is, and then go on your merry way. But we did that at that booth. There was a couple of other ones that we went to. what's the card game that we got? Lightseekers. There was a booth for that. It's basically just you can have multiple players, but you have all these different themed decks of different elements, and you just duel against each other effectively. And it's pretty neat. They had even like an iPhone and iPad app that go with it, so you can scan the cards and everything, and that was pretty cool.
They have action figures that go with it too.
Yeah,
So
but the
yeah.
action figures really go with just like the app because they're toys to life, as it were, in the vein of Skylanders and Imaginators and all that other stuff.
But there's a lot of games that you can try before you buy them, because there's a lot that were hit and miss. We went to go try one, and none of the tables were open, so we played a little like pirate game instead. And it seemed like really kind of childish at first, but the rules of it were complicated enough that I was like, all right, this isn't for kids after all. But it's a really great way to see games that you want in person, check them out, see if you're actually going to like them. And if they don't have it on playtest there, they might have it in the game hall, and you can sign up for an event to actually go play it.
And also, some of the vendors, like if they're not demoing a specific game, I went to the Level 99 booth. They're the people, they do Pixel Tactics and a couple other games whose names escape me at the moment. But I wanted to learn Pixel Tactics. I wanted to know about it because they had Mega Man expansions, and I have an inordinate love for Mega Man. So I asked one of the guys, I was like, hey, do you all have a demo for this game? And they're like, we're not demoing it right now, but I'll go get a box, I'll open it up, and we'll play. I was like, awesome. So I got to try that out, and just ask the people that you're there seeing if they're not showing the game you want to see. They might be willing to open one up if they have one and try it out for you. But after that, looking at the little slide here you're seeing, the very last point here under the main exhibit hall is that this is the most dense part of the convention. This is where you're going to have the most traffic, and it's going to be warm at best. And it can be loud and overwhelming because there is a lot of people, a lot of stuff to see, a lot of stuff to take in. They actually have a quiet room that you can go to if you become overwhelmed and you have to get away, you have to get out, because even just like stepping outside is probably not going to help you because there's tons of people outside too. They usually have it on their map, or if you don't know, there will be people around the convention hall that you'll be able to spot that they work for Gen Con, and they'll tell you, you can ask them, hey, where's the quiet room? I need to get away, and they'll be able to help you find where it's at.
Yeah, I can add to that too. It's unbelievable how dense it gets in there. And as a person who I'm generally extroverted, I generally am okay around a bunch of people. This place is, even for me, gets pretty heavy sometimes. You've got to stick to the walls and have a plan a lot of times.
And there's some dead space, like off to the wall, like you said. You can kind of pull yourself back and recuperate and kind of gather yourself again, and then get back into the fray. This is a completely open event to people who have wheelchairs and things like that, so keep those in mind. I don't know how many times I saw someone in a wheelchair getting run over, and I'm like, my goodness, let this person through. So you can't always see certain people, and kids come. On the first slide when I was talking about prices, kids 10 and under are free with an adult. So you have to be mindful of that. There were a couple times that I would just kind of grab onto my husband, or when I was with Mal, I'd just like grab onto his backpack. I don't know if he actually noticed. I just kind of like followed because Mal's really big, like tall wise.
Did not notice. That backpack is ridiculous.
He just kind of plowed
good
through.
backpack awareness, folks. Practice good backpack awareness. Be aware of your backpack.
It's all the Pokemon that were in there. You couldn't tell.
I had so many Zubats in that backpack you don't even know.
Oh, I've got a pretty good idea.
Mal was dressed as a Pokemon hiker for cosplay one day, so it was absolutely adorable to see the kids coming up to him. Adorable.
And I guess we'll, unless there's any other talking points you all want to, we can move on to the gaming hall, which I was also in a fair amount.
Foxy had a question. I'm trying to read it.
That's not a.
Okay, it's not a question. There was a question mark. Foxy, stop it.
So basically, the gaming hall is where all the tournaments are held, and there are going to be a lot of the gaming events that are held there as well. It is, I believe, 4 halls that are all opened up into one gigantic place, and there's just tables upon tables upon tables, just rows of them, and that's where I was in a Star Realms tournament that I did terribly at, but I was there and it was cool. And with those, like they were saying earlier, you'll definitely want to show up to stuff like that, 10 to 15 minutes early, just to make sure that everything is sorted and, you're where you're supposed to be. They had a section of it where they actually had BattleTech pods. Says Mech Warrior, but close enough. And I didn't get to try that because it was kind of expensive, but it seemed like it would be something really cool. Have either of you messed with that at all?
I have not played them at Gen Con itself, but I did get the opportunity. Those same pods, there are several of them around the country, but I got to play them in Chicago many years ago. It is a fantastic experience. It's like very early VR, and I don't know if they've updated the graphics much or anything, but it's one of the cooler kind of experiences you can do. At least play a game, and you get in there, and they're all networked, and yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I do recommend it. It is very fun.
Very cool. And like it says here, there actually is one. There's multiple booths, I believe, but there was one specifically that was in the gaming hall where if you have trading cards, like I don't think they do WoW anymore, but like if you have Yu-Gi-Oh cards or Pokemon cards or Magic cards that you decided you don't want anymore and you're willing to sell them for not quite what they're worth, then you can go to this booth and they will look over your cards and they will give you prices on pretty much anything you've got. And it's not a terrible price that you get, but it could be better. But it is an option you have if you are a card collector that is tired of your collection.
And unless something has changed, this is the room on Sunday morning. And you'll want to get there doubly early for this if you choose to participate in the World Championship for the Hungry Hippos. We thought, kind of on a whim, I kept joking about it. I was like, I would really like to go participate in the Hungry Hippos World Championship. And then we decided, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and go do that. And there were so many people.
Look, Sari, you don't understand. Hungry Hippos is very competitive. It is, after all, an eating race.
And
Competitive eating is no joke.
It is. It is not.
On the plus side, we didn't do that, and instead we just quickly looked at the program for the day and thought, what are we going to find here that we could play? Let's just find something quick, because I didn't have anything until my microscope game that you got me into later. And that is where we discovered what is hands down my favorite thing that we got. It was the game of Battle Goats. And it was fantastic. The game creators were awesome. They got us in there. We played. They even autographed our copy that we bought. It's hands down my favorite game, and I think Reading kind of hates it. Every time we
I
play.
like it. It's good. It's just frustrating.
I was the queen of the goats because I won like every single one after that first game for a little bit, and I think he was a little bitter, but now I don't win every time, so it's okay.
And also in the gaming hall is where they have the cosplay parade, which I just have put a link into chat. That is the cosplay parade from last year that I took a video of. So feel free to take a look at that now or later, preferably later, but whatever suits your fancy.
we'll talk about your question in a little bit about playing with just randos. We'll kind of talk about that when we get to the events. See what's next. Oh, these are just pictures of the exhibit hall. Probably should have been scrolling through those while you were talking about them. Wouldn't that have been a good idea?
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Probably would have been a good idea. It is really an amazing sight to see because the beholder on the left was a tabletop statue. You can actually buy these as like wall trophies. You can get mind flayers too. I'm very tempted to just get a couple of them, you know, if I'm ever wealthy enough.
Yeah, isn't the idea behind them to be that it's supposed to look like a trophy mount for a wall?
Yes.
Like the Mind Flayer head very much looked like it was a Mind Flayer that had been decapitated and mounted on a shield.
Totally, and
Well,
it is
it's kind of
really
hard to get a beholder to look like that because
Yeah.
there is no head per se to mount. You just have to mount the whole thing and hope for the best.
Yeah, but the Mind Flayer one is actually like a mounted trophy. It's so awesome. And this Boss Monsters display is a full size. It was probably my height. They're a little bit taller.
Yeah, it was a good size, like 4.5 feet tall.
Five.
5, maybe.
And it was one of the smaller ones.
There's always a couple of these big sculptures, and my favorite one year was the at the top of the escalators. I know I'm rabbit trailing a bit, but they had the box art for the Dungeons and Dragons Red Box basic set from the 80s, and you could stand there where the fighter is, you know, up in front of the big red dragon, and it was super cool. I have a picture of it somewhere. I did it. It was great. The sculptures are amazing.
They are.
Yeah, and as you'll see now, the one on the left, that one is about 8.5, 9 feet tall, maybe bigger. Kind of hard to tell from here, but I remember it being very, very large.
And that's from Malifaux.
And then on the right there is that is the booth where they had the Dark Souls game, and I believe that is actually the character from Dark Souls 3, maybe.
And this is actually that Dark Souls picture is good. You can see up in the top right corner, you can see a giant banner hanging from the ceiling. That tells you 2800. So right underneath that banner, that's the 2800s area for booth numbers. So that's going to be really important. Those are going to help navigate you kind of everywhere, because without those, you're kind of lost. Here are the Battletech pods too.
Every year I grab the program. You were talking about the interactive app, but like at first I had no idea what I was doing, so I just wandered the hall and hoped for the best. Like now I kind of follow certain publishers and game designers and things, and so every year I grab my map and I mark them out, and then I figure out the easiest place to get in and make a straight line to them all and get out without actually having to engage that much. And it's you know, it helps to plan, like you said earlier. Meticulous planning is your friend.
You heard it here, folks. Always have a Batman plan.
Which is great segue to talk about what are events and about those, because this is where you're really going to have to do most of your planning. And I think Javine found out that it's kind of overwhelming because, like I said, there were 19,000 event listings last year. So the first question you had to ask yourself is, what is an event? What are the events? Because this is a huge overarching term for basically anything that is a separate payment. Because like I said, your badge gets you into places, but events are completely separate.
And this year there are 13,000, let's see, how many was that there? 13,665 events as of right now.
Yes.
And that is across all 4 days.
And that is live now on the website to look at those and add them to your wish list, but actual event registration won't start until May 6th. Now, when we say events, we're talking about those tournaments that you can participate in. We're talking about the arcade, which we'll have a little bit more on as well later. We're talking about workshops, where I took several workshops last year. The film that Mal talked about, that is an event technically. True Dungeon runs, our events, arts and crafts. We have a whole list of them. So, like I said, the catalog is now live that you can add things to your wish list, and you can start planning timing and things because they have set times that they occur. And then on May 6th, you're going to want to register for some of those immediately because they do fill up. They have limits, especially bigger events like Mal said. I know the one that sells out the most that jumped out at me was Critical Role does several panels and events.
They're supposed to be doing a live
Yes.
a live episode of Critical Role, and you can bet your bottom dollar that that one is going to be very hard to get into.
It will probably sell out within the first couple of hours. Guaranteed.
Maybe
I think they're doing
hours?
3.
Minutes.
Yeah, probably minutes. I think they're actually doing several. If you search for Critical Role, I saw at least 2. I don't know if they're both live episodes, but I did see they were doing a couple because I wanted to see Matt Mercer and have him autograph my McCree Pop, and I was like, well, that's never going to happen because those will go immediately, I'm sure. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know that last year, True Dungeon put up 8,000 tickets, like 8,000 separate tickets, and we sold them all in just under an hour.
So we're going to have to get on that quickly.
Yes, be ready. Be very ready.
Now, one of the things, too, is if you didn't get into an event you wanted, you should definitely grab some generic tickets. You can get generic $2. They're $2, and all events are kind of like in either they're going to be 2, 6, 10, 18, 22. They're going to be in a way that you can pay with generic tickets as well. But of course, a generic ticket is not going to get you in unless there's just a spot open. So if an event has filled up, but you really want to go, you can go get in line, and then if people don't show, they can squeeze you in. Now, say you sign up for an event and you decide you don't want to do that anymore.
You can take those tickets back to the information booth or the customer service booth, and as long as the event has not started, they will refund that to you in generic tickets, I believe, and then you can get something else with it or just hang on to them. And then if you have leftover event tickets at the end of the event that are generics, you can turn those in and they will give you credit on your account for next year.
Yeah, so we didn't have to pay the full price of our badges this year because we had some leftover tickets from events last year that we didn't get to use. So we just traded them in for system credit, and that reduced the cost of our badges this year. So don't let those go to waste. Make sure you get to a the registration area before everything closes up on Sunday, and they can take care of that for you. Everyone is very helpful. The lines will look enormous at the registration area. Do not worry because they are fast. The line to pick up our badges was like miles long, it looked like, but we were done in like 10 minutes. Like, it was super fast. We got through the line incredibly fast.
The booths for registration and ticket pickup and all that stuff are heavily manned, and they are very efficient. One thing to note, however, is if you take an event ticket, I think it's at the end, when you exchange them for your credit, there is a surcharge on those, I believe, like 10% or something like that. It was a very, very small amount. So you won't get the full value of your tickets back, but it is like 95% of what you paid is what you'll get back. So just one thing to keep in mind.
Now, here's more about what we were talking about with the events. Now, unfortunately, under the everything else, the renewal of the wedding vows, that was apparently just last year. There's nothing on the event list for it this year, which is a real bummer because that was fantastic. And I looked, I could not see it anywhere, so I think that was a special event. It was wonderful. you go, it's a mass renewal of vows. It's completely free. They have I think a cash bar at the end. And the very vocal Viking does your actual vows and holds up signs for you to read. It's really nerdy. It makes you teary-eyed. Somebody took a video of it, and there are several clips of me being sappy. So, but it was really cute. It was a wonderful little experience. And at the end, we got a certificate signed by the Very Vocal Viking and the CEO of Gen Con. So it was a really interesting experience, and it was something I'm really glad that we participated in. But other than that, all these other things should be occurring. So sorry, I didn't realize that was not being offered this year. And it's possible they could add it back, but I think at this point, probably everything that's going to be up is up. Mal is the best person to ask, unless John has also participated in actual RPGs, like tabletop RPGs, because we didn't do any. We just mainly focused on board games and card games and workshops. So I'll let Mal talk about what it's like to do an RPG there and character creation and whatnot that you would do.
So first off, you can get into RPGs with generic tickets, and I actually found you are surprisingly reliably able to do that if you show up to the RPG early. It kind of amazed me how many people dropped out of the RPGs. So kind of what I was aiming for, and I had a very good experience with in Gen Con, was I get to play a lot of RPGs, and I might be a little bit of a deviation from the norm in that regard. So I already get to play a lot of things like Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, the more popular RPGs. So I found the Gen Con one-shots to be a very excellent opportunity for getting to try some other systems that are a little bit less common, that I heard things about and was very interested in trying without putting all of my money into buying the system. So some of the ones I got to try that I had never done before included the Exalted game, which is the high fantasy system made by White Wolf of World of Darkness fame. I also got to try the Iron Kingdoms RPG, which is the pen and paper system for the Iron Kingdoms setting for the Warhammer, or not Warhammer, War Machine tabletop war game. I also got to try a more low fantasy game called Shadows of Esteren, in which you are pretty much guaranteed to die at some point in time while playing the game. It's very gritty, and the entire party died at the end of the game. And I also tried a RPG called The End of the World, where you are actually playing yourself, and your inventory is what you have with you currently. And I got very lucky with that because I had my ridiculously big backpack with me that was filled with fix my costume supplies that ended up being very useful. As it turns out, duct tape has many uses. Who knew? So to play an RPG, the RPGs are listed in the schedule. They have their own category, and it's a little bit separated from the other events. They do require their own tickets, but you can get into them with generic tickets. They are going to be a pre-written game. Usually they're not a module that you could go and buy, so you're not going to be doing like some one-shot version of a published Tomb of Annihilation. It's going to be something that the DM has written just for the game. But I highly recommend it because it's a fantastic opportunity to try some RPGs that you've maybe not gotten to try. Although, for those of you who haven't really gotten to try Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, Starfinder or maybe Edge of the Empire, the Star Wars role-playing system, or some of the more popular tabletop RPGs, there are definitely going to be some of those as well. And it's a good opportunity to just sort of try. You get to meet new people. It's an opportunity. I do highly recommend it. And RPGs are kind of in the spirit of Gen Con a little bit. I mean, this is Gygax's convention, so you are doing what the creators intended. I don't think that a fidget spinner is going to be very helpful in End of the Penny. So, does anybody have any questions about RPGs? How they work, how it happens at Gen Con, what one-shots are like?
Did you make your characters in advance?
No, you do not make your characters in advance. The DM will give you a couple of different characters to play. You do not go through character creation when you are playing one-shot.
I think that not having a choice to saying, hey, here.
Well, they don't go, hey, here. There's like, here's 8 different character sheets. Pick one out of this 8.
Now, I'll probably need your help trying to find that Pathfinder 2nd Edition thing because I couldn't find it on the list.
The Pathfinder 2nd Edition trial is a play test of a new game, so it's not an official event. It's going to be held at the Paizo booth.
Oh, okay.
In the exhibit hall. Most play testing is going to be done separately from being its own event. It's going to be done in the exhibit hall, and they usually run those games on an availability basis. Like they'll, in some of the more popular ones, lines will actually form up, and so they're trying to run through those as quickly as possible. The Pathfinder test is very much so going to be that. Some of the other ones, you might recall us trying that escape room deck game that we tried. It would be kind of similar to that, except because we were the only people who were trying it, they were just waiting around to get new people to come and try it on an availability basis.
Random side note, I picked one of those up at GameStop for like $7 on clearance.
Ooh.
It's some pirate themed one.
Nice.
Those are a lot of fun. The only thing was the replay value of it, kind of.
There is no replay value unless you fail.
Yeah. I mean, that could be said for escape rooms in general. Thankfully, I don't think True Dungeon is a problem.
Yeah, I
Because
don't think that's
they're ducks in a row.
Absolutely. True Dungeon is different every year, and sometimes it's different from run to run.
So, RPGs are... they're fun. In my personal opinion, they're a great way to spend generic tickets. They're pretty easy to get into. They're going most of the day. They're pretty laid back. You get to sit down for a little bit, catch your breath. You're in a side room that's not crowded. It's going to be a little bit more quiet. That is, in my personal opinion, RPGs are the way to spend it.
And when you're not doing those, you can either, if you're not wandering around, you can always pick up some of the workshops. I did 3 workshops last year that one of them was an introduction to being a game master. Another one was learning how to make isometric maps, and like a lot of the workshops and art and craft events that they have, you get free stuff with some of these to take home. So like with the isometric map workshop, I got this huge roll of isometric map making paper. I haven't opened it yet, but I intend to. And the other one I took, which was so much fun, which I got really lucky and got a group of people with me that were kind of in tune with something that was interesting to me, was a course that was... It was actually a workshop just for women and minorities where we made our own RPG. And we just got together with some a group of people at our table, and we made out how our attributes and skill sets were going to be, what kind of dice rolling or cards we were going to use, and an overall theme and attacks and abilities. It was absolutely fantastic. Some of the workshops might be hit and miss. Make sure you look at it and kind of get an idea for what it is. And Redan has signed up for a couple of them, and that's how we found out you could exchange your tickets, because he didn't really, the first one didn't grab him, so he's like, well, I don't want to take the other one. So that's
Yeah, I signed up for a class on, or a workshop rather, I suppose, on starting a game store that lasts. And then I signed up for the second one beforehand just because I figured, might as well take both of them, because the other one was like about managing the game store, I think. And it's just the presentation was just like super dry. Like the guy wasn't particularly interesting. So that's just something you'll run into.
Yeah, most of these are either put on by individuals or by groups. The one I talked about was put on by the group Contessa, who their entire purpose is organizing games, and everyone who runs any of their workshops and games is usually someone who's from a minority group, or like either people of color or by women or transgender, things like that. So they have a lot of different things that they put on throughout as well. They're also the ones who put on the Microscope game that I played on Sunday, which was the only RPG that we played. Javid and Penny got a taste of that when we played here on Twitch one night, and it is absolute madness, but it is so much fun. So you can hop into games like that as well that are kind of like RPGs, but it's a very different kind. And there's arts and crafts like chainmail teddy bear outfits and dice bags and t-shirts and totes and all sorts of things. The game library is one of the things I really want to point out on this. With that, it is something that you buy tickets for. That is
It
an
is
$8 ticket, if I'm not
Mistaken.
mistaken.
it's 8 hours. I'm not sure of the exact cost.
Yeah,
But
that earlier.
it's 8 hours of time at the Pick Up and Play game library. They have 3,000 unique titles of just older games, newer games, all sorts of games, of everything from RPGs to board games to card games, all sorts of stuff that you can just get a pass and you can come and go whenever you want with that and sit down and play games. This is where your question, Foxy, about just getting together with random people, you can just walk in there and see a bunch of random people and say, hey, you want to play this game? And they'll say, sure. We actually didn't get to use ours because our schedule ended up being way busier that day than we thought. I think Mal's roommate got in there at one point, though, and there's this huge shelves full of games. And I think there's actually going to be more than just that game. There's also going to be a couple events by like Board Game Geeks where they're going to have some of the newer games, and launches at Gen Con will be available for play too, so you'll have that. The films, Foxy, that I'm wanting to say there's more than just the one, but Mal had talked about earlier about the horrible parody film about why Dungeons and Dragons is satanic. They had that, but I think there are a couple of others that they show as well. Oh,
There's also a theater just a block or two from the convention center, and they're showing, geeky movies all weekend. They really cater to the convention.
Oh, the whole area really does.
Yeah, there's banners and stuff all up and down the streets about Gen Con and all kinds of
All
stuff.
of the menus change at the bars and the restaurants. Like the names of the food all changes. There's all kinds of stuff. There's the Self Park sign inevitably gets the S stolen, and it just says Elf Park for 4 days. That's
And they have hot box pizzas. Had like a special pizza with gold edible glitter on it last year. And I'm not even a pizza person, but I wanted to eat gold glitter pizza. I didn't get any, but they also had like special brews. They have a brewing company that puts out special Gen Con brews as well. So
I think my favorite one was my favorite name. They name it every year, but my favorite one was Froth of Khan. I think that was probably the best.
the whole downtown area just kind of becomes our domain for the week of these events. So everyone kind of feels at home.
Yeah, and downtown Indy really loves the nerd crowd. They love the geeks. Actually, everyone I've spoken to really enjoys the crowd.
This is at the Retro Game Arcade. There's also arcade machines in the tunnel that connects the convention center and the stadium. There's a few there, but you have to pay for those. The ones in the arcade room that you buy an event, that use the event or generic tickets for, those are all unlocked, like Chris said, you don't have to pay for those. So a lot of them have different games in them. And also in that corridor, just as a side note, when you walk from the convention center to the stadium, there is also a booth there where you can enter a raffle and donate to charity. So I encourage you to do that as well. Gen Con as a whole raised a lot of money for charity last year. It was fantastic that they achieved that. So definitely stop there and just drop in a little bit, get a raffle ticket, maybe win. They gave away tickets to Gen Con this year was the prize. Obviously we didn't win, but it's absolutely wonderful that they do it, and that way you can also help a good cause.
Another really fun charity, while it's on my mind, Card Hala every year, where you spend the whole weekend building these huge structures out of old Magic cards and just like building card houses and towers and castles and so forth. And then at the end of the week they have a destruction ceremony where you throw money at them to knock them over. It's a lot of fun to watch.
To answer your question, Foxy, it is 151 miles from Notre Dame to Indiana Convention Center.
And what John said actually led right into this slide conveniently, because there's a lot to do, and we've talked about all this like overwhelming stuff that's going on, but you should definitely take some time to just kind of wander around. And like he said, you've got the trading card building that goes on, and they use the old cards and build structures. They had a balloon dragon last year that they built over the course of the weekend, and then they slayed it on Sunday. They've got the game library that you can just pick up and play, the arcade games, the special exhibits. They have a few of those smaller ones. Usually they have an auction that goes on. You can collect your buttons, hunt down all the special gifts that are in your coupon book. There's the cosplay parade, and then there's of course normal cosplay. And there's just musical performers out there. There's jugglers. There's all sorts of people just hanging out. And it's absolutely amazing to just see the kind of people that come and are wandering around. The giant art project is something that everybody can contribute to. You just go up to the booth for it. It's outside of the exhibit halls. And so like this art piece was made by people in attendance. It wasn't just made by the individual people running that booth. So it's a really neat experience to go and kind of color and contribute something other than just being there. And we were doing a whole lot of talking about food. The entire street shuts down at certain times and brings in food trucks. And they have the special brew that comes in. They have a little, I don't know what kind of term to use, a drinking area.
Beer garden.
Yes, beer garden. So they set that up. But honestly, the first day we ate at food trucks. But honestly, the best way we found was just to have the convention food. And of course, there's restaurants in the area. But inside the convention hall and the stadium, there are concession stands. And unlike other concession stands, they were incredibly affordable. And you got humongous portions. Mal and Rita both got just baskets with like a pound of meat in them. They were enormous.
It was huge. It was the pot roast sandwich was like $6, and it was probably literally between a third and a half pound of pot roast on a bun with potato chips, and it was amazing. I literally ate that, I think, every single time I ate after we did the food trucks.
And there's never really a long line at the concession. There's so many concession stands. There's several of them. And there's never more than maybe 5 people ahead of you, if that. Sometimes you just walk up, get your food, and go. So I found those were way easier. I'm not going to mess with the food trucks anymore. Because it's just, like he said, like $6 and you get enough food to keep you going all day. And don't forget to eat. Because apparently that's a major problem at this. People forget to eat and you get really weak. So you need to make sure that you eat, make sure you rest, make sure you shower, make sure you wear deodorant, like basic hygiene.
If you do not shower, I will find you. Because
well, that won't be that hard, will it?
Exactly. Do it. Take a shower. Jeez, why is that so hard, people?
I would personally recommend, like, everyone's got a pack or a bag or something. If your I don't know, if your blood sugar is sensitive, or if you have things like, and you can't just get away to eat real quick, keep some snacks on you and some water. It's super helpful because, like we talked earlier about how dense the exhibit hall is. You may get out in the middle of it, and you can save yourself 45 minutes if you don't have to go get something to eat. If you can have a granola bar and some water, and then just keep going. You know, it's be prepared is the motto.
Batman plan.
Yeah, we packed we stayed with my best friend, and we took this huge box of fruit snacks. And every evening when we went back to her house, we would take just like handfuls and put them in our bags. Make sure you take a bag. Men, take a man purse, whatever, a backpack, a satchel, messenger bag, something. Because
you just man up and, take a purse.
You take whatever you need to take, because you definitely need it.
Absolutely. Also, good shoes, comfortable shoes.
Yes.
I specifically buy a new set of insoles for my shoes before every convention.
Okay, so this is a fun little story. Every year I volunteer, I do the True Dungeon thing. I show up on the Monday before the con. We work building the dungeon till Wednesday. It runs Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we tear it down Sunday, and then I leave the following Monday. Over the course of that whole time, I generally walk about 72 miles indoors. And so you can't imagine how big it is and how much you walk. So good shoes, good insoles, socks, and even sock liners will keep you from getting blisters. Super handy stuff.
I didn't know sock liners was a thing.
Sock liners, yeah, and a lot of times it's like hikers that use them, but it's a thinner sock that goes inside your sock, but so instead of your feet rubbing against the sock liners rub against the socks and stay against your feet, so it keeps those hot spots from happening. Really helpful.
And that's why we're doing this stream.
You heard it here, folks. Sock liners.
Socks for your socks.
Word.
Yo, dog, I heard you like socks.
So we put some socks on your socks.
So you can walk without having foot blisters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think the rest of this is mostly just cosplay. First things first, when you see someone in a costume, firstly, you're gonna be amazed because there's awesome cosplayers there. Secondly, don't just stop in the middle of the convention. Don't, especially in the exhibit hall. You may not see them again, so try and snap something, or just ask them, hey, could you step over here to the wall so I could grab a picture? Because there's a lot of people here, and you honestly may never see them again. But they're
Also, try to actually ask before taking a picture when
Yes.
you can. Most people who are in costumes are perfectly okay with having their picture taken, but it never hurts to double check. Every once in a while, you just have that one person who's really not comfortable with having their picture taken for whatever reason. That's, that's their thing. That's just ask, ask before taking a picture.
I make it a rule to always ask, just in case. And like I never had a single person tell me no. They're usually pretty excited about it.
Yeah, because they did this and they're really proud of their work because these are just outstanding. The amount of effort that goes into it and the results. And like this picture right here, you can see that caution tape down at the bottom. This is a designated cosplay area. It is sectioned off. It's a huge space. It is specifically there for cosplayers to just stand and you to take their picture. If they're there, they know you it's totally okay for you to take their picture. That's why they're there. So don't walk through it. It's so easy to overlook. And people just kind of walk on through. They're not paying attention. That is that whole purpose of that place. And you will always be able to find it because there's a huge crowd of people around it. But like I said, try and ask if they're not in that area, if they're just like out and about. Chances are someone's already going to be taking their picture. But try and ask. But there are some really outstanding people. They put a lot of work into this. Some of them look like they're straight out of a game. It's incredible.
Like that warlock. That was amazing, seeing that gun up close.
Honestly, in my opinion, it's the attention to detail that really separates a good costume from a great costume. So yeah, when they get really into the subtle nuances of their props, that's really something.
Kind of like that Ood head.
Yes.
And I really don't, it doesn't have to be elaborate. Like, I saw this, the exception is a lot of times I would see a cosplayer and then never see them again. But this lady on the left, I saw her so many times before I finally stopped her and asked if I could take a picture. And it's not exactly a difficult costume to put together, but I really, really liked it. And a lot of them were like that. They're just amazing.
Remember, if you're going in a costume, you're not going for other people, you're going for yourself. It's not about like when we were first going to Dragon Con, my roommate was having a hard time thinking of a costume to do because he's got a very large beard. And he didn't want to cut off his beard for a costume because beards take a while to grow. There's not a lot of people in pop culture that have beards, especially when we were first kind of starting the whole con going thing. So one of the conversations that came up was like, well, you just started reading the Dresden Files. Why don't you go as Harry Dresden? And he said, well, Dresden doesn't have a beard. I can't go as Harry Dresden. I'm like, why does that matter? Like, you're not going there in costume to try to, like, out-costume other people. You're doing it to have fun. And so he did. He put together a Dresden costume and went as evil Dresden with a beard. And he had a lot of fun. That's kind of the mentality to take away from it. Just, you're not doing it for other people, you're doing it for yourself.
And at Gen Con, there are plenty of Harry Dresdens.
And it's a great opportunity to walk up to that Harry and say, "You're a wizard, Harry."
You cannot throw a rock without hitting 2 Harry Dresdens at least.
Or 5 Deadpools.
Or 5 Deadpools. Or one really old man who's dressed as Stan Lee, or not dressed as Stan Lee. It's kind of hard to tell.
That makes me think one year that our sort of con maxim became you can't swing a Deadpool without hitting a Harley Quinn.
That's so
Yep.
true. It's so true. There are so many Deadpools and Harley Quinns.
And there are Harley Quinns dressed as Deadpools. It's crazy.
And I'm sorry that like 90% of the cosplay pictures I had were just Overwatch characters.
I mean, you were kind of just getting into Overwatch when that con happened, so it makes sense.
I mean,
I
it's
wish that
gonna
I
be-
had remembered to. I wish I had thought about it because I've got a couple of my costumes that I've done, and it would have been a good addition to this part of the slideshow. But yeah, the costumes are a lot of fun.
I never think to take pictures of people in costumes. I always go there and I'm like, oh wow, these are all amazing costumes. But the transition from oh wow to I should get out my phone and take a picture just never happens.
It happened with me like a lot. I just found myself carrying my phone around because I was just so amazed. And half the people was like, I don't even know what they are, but I have got to get a picture because this is amazing.
Yeah, you do not mess with Red Wizards of Thay.
She was fantastic too. She had a mask as well, I think, or like a hood.
I think it was a headdress she had. I forget.
We saw her just in one of the adjoining hotels while we were going to an event, and she was wonderful. There's just so much to look at, and some of them are just silly.
So while we're going to these last pictures, does anybody have any other questions or anything?
I just the She-Ra and the Shadow cosplay. That's really good. I like that.
Yes, I was very excited about it. That's
The Shadow knows. That was a really cool radio program.
Yeah, because we're almost at the end if people have questions.
And Alec Baldwin was actually kind of, sort of, a little bit okay in the.
You know, I never watched that movie. I kind of assumed it was going to be awful, but
I mean, it's a fun awful. It's like The Rocketeer.
okay, I can get behind that.
Billy Zane was in it, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty much a requirement for any movie of that era and that particular quality. Like Billy Zane was in it. That was part of the contract.
Yeah, basically.
Hey, John, if you wanted to DM me that link, I can post it in the chat.
Oh, sure, for the sock liners? Yeah, let me toss that over there.
Oh, the sock liners?
Very important. Sock liners, get you some. And if you're wearing boots, 2 layers of socks. I am talking from experience.
And no steel toes. Do not wear steel toes.
Unless you are, accustomed to wearing steel-toe boots all the time.
My Pokemon hiker costumes boots are steel-toed boots.
I went for a hike in steel toes once. It did not end well.
Okay, so this is the last slide. The Loki picture on the right, that's the Lucas Oil Stadium. It would have been nice if I would have gotten a picture of like the whole thing all set up because it is enormous. And there's more than just the museum there. They also had like a kind of like a raffle, not an auction, but like a raffle thing going on.
It was a raffle near the end. One of the companies was giving away a lot of games and stuff.
There's also an auction that you can go to as well, where they auction off different things. So there are so many events that I didn't even know about. It was just absolutely amazing. I wish I would have gotten some pictures of like performers, jugglers, and musicians and stuff, but didn't really think about doing this until after the fact almost. But it was really fantastic and cannot encourage you enough to go because it's just an outstanding experience. If you get your tickets now, you can go ahead and pay them off. We've already paid Like, we bought ours on a credit card and have already paid them off. It's something that you can quickly do because this isn't till August. You've got a lot of time to build up and save up and make plans and just talk to friends, see if you can carpool. I can't encourage people
Carpooling
enough.
helps a lot.
Yes. Especially when parking's like almost $20 a day. You all chip in just a few bucks.
And my other bit of advice I would have for people who are going to Gen Con kind of their first time is be a little bit casual with it. You're going to be very tempted to try to bite off a little bit more than you can probably chew. Pick like 2 events a day that you want to go to, and then try to fill in the rest of the space, if you've got it, with general tickets. Especially if you're doing RPGs, because RPGs take up a pretty big chunk of time, usually about 4 hours. So you're going to be hard pressed to get more than 2 RPGs into a day. I usually would get like 1 RPG and a panel, and then see like what else I could do with tickets. And then every once in a while you end up in a scenario where you are getting the last open spot for a game of Microscope, which is the entire convention away from the registration booth where you could pick up the tickets, and then you have to speed walk the entire way back in costume. No, I wasn't in costume that day.
No, you
That was
weren't in
good.
costume that day.
I was not in costume that day. She would not have been in that game if costume that day.
Yeah,
I would recommend if you're going to be there all 4 days, you may want to get 10 or 15 generic tickets just to have with you, in case you run across something that you maybe missed when you were looking at the event registration and decide, hey, I want to do this, and that way you'll have tickets just at the ready.
12 is a good number for generic tickets. Don't go too much beyond that, though.
Yeah, because you can always get more while you're there.
Right. Yeah, you can buy more tickets while you're there. You can register for events that still have openings while you're there and get tickets for that.
Right. And that way you have the specific ticket as opposed to generic tickets, which one distinction between that is a specific ticket guarantees you a spot there.
A generic ticket does not.
Correct.
If you have additional questions after the stream, you can hit me up on Discord. I think a lot of the people here are actually on the RPHQ Discord. If not, you can visit rphq.org and join our Discord there. Or you can just send me a message on there. You can send me a message here on Twitch.
Or you could leave a question on the RPHQ forum.
Yes, we will be happy to get to you and answer all your questions. My Discord name, I'm sure I have like a number or something that is attached to it,
You do have a number.
but I can't see it apparently. I think it's like 18 something.
2834.
I am Celestia, number 2834. So you can always send me something there. I also just linked something else in the Twitch chat. This is something I got last year, and I did not utilize it to the extent of its abilities. Like, it's called the Conquest Journal. I did not use it as much as I would have liked to. I think if I would have gone there and tested more games, I probably would have used it a little bit better. I did use a free little PDF example from it to help plan out things I wanted to do. But it's just a little journal, and then inside it has pages where you can write down like your game experience, list games that you played, notes about how to play them. It has RPG pages for your campaign and the skills that you have and the equipment you're going to have. It's got graph paper, notes.
Wow, I kind of want this now.
It is really fantastic. I did not, like I said, I did not get to use it as much as I should have. It's very handy. If you're going to take any workshop, make sure even if you're not taking a workshop, take a notebook, just a little notebook, and ink pens, pencils. You're going to need them. Anything you might want autographed, there's going to be artists there. The artist alley is very large. They have musicians there. There's always a Midnight Syndicate table. Authors are there. Brandon Sanderson was there last year. Totally didn't even know that.
The crazy thing about a lot of these authors and celebrities is they go to this convention to play games as gamers. Like, you'll run into them, but they're not there like as a guest. They're there as an attendee, which is wild.
Yeah,
A
'cause-
lot of celebrities go in very elaborate costumes to not get recognized, so watch for
Much
that.
like how Adam Savage does when he goes to stuff like that. He's usually in something that completely covers him up, so you don't know it's him.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a couple of people, like a couple of celebrities that really, they're true Dungeon fans, and they'll like wander in, and we're all trying to keep it low key and like get them in the room, and then like not let anybody, so they can play and not be swarmed. And it's interesting how many of them you'll see just wandering around.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I didn't actually get to talk to him, but I'm pretty sure that I saw Jeff from Rooster Teeth there last year.
He was totally there. He was coming down
I
the
believe so.
escalator as we were going up the escalator. And we're like, was that Jeff from Rooster Teeth?
We had the entire Critical Role ran last year. Will Wheaton and his crew. We get them. They just blow in and out, and we try not to make a big deal about it.
It's kind of hard, though, when you want a fangirl or fanboy or whichever.
I believe
Yeah.
it is always fangirling.
Yeah, it totally is. And like maintaining chill is sometimes difficult.
Alright, well, I think that probably about wraps it up. Any closing thoughts from you lovely people here?
Be excellent unto each other.
Party on, dudes.
Looks like Celestia is posting some links in the chat for RPHQ and maybe something else. I don't know, she's typing.
I don't
I don't
think
think I got to drink any alcohol last time, Javine. I don't recall, but I really don't think I did.
Yeah, you usually have to either stay up past 10 or bring alcohol with you for that sort of thing. Also, room parties. That's not as much of a thing at Gen Con as it is at other conventions. So if you're expecting to get in on a like really big wild party scene, you want something a little bit more like Dragon Con if you're wanting.
Yeah, now you might end up in a room playing some hardcore second edition AD&D or something, till 4 in the morning. But
I am so sorry. Not Thaco. Those grapple.
I mean, there are like some workshops on burlesque and
Bondage, if I
bondage,
recall.
Yes.
rope bondage, and advanced rope bondage.
There is almost always a midnight BDSM workshop at just about any convention you go to.
And no one will sign up for them with me.
On that note,
Yeah, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Javine will take part, I'm sure. Javine will not take part.
he
I'm
will
sure.
not take part. He'll walk in and say, "This is unsanitary," and walk out.
Javine is a food sheriff, don't worry. Well, thanks everybody for coming out. It was good to have a lot of questions. Thank you, John, for joining us and answering questions and explaining True Dungeon. We literally would not have been able to do any of that without you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come visit with us.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
I hope that a lot of people will take part in Gen Con this year and in True Dungeon, and hopefully we have gathered some volunteers for you in the future as well.
There's another sucker born every minute.
All right, guys, thanks for coming out. Mal, thank you also. I know you are incredibly busy. Redan and I are not busy, so we have plenty of time. Thanks, everybody. And if you have any other questions, drop them on rphq.org, or you can send them to me on Discord or Twitter or whatever, because I will find your questions and I will answer them to the best of my abilities or pass you on to someone else who can. Have a great night, guys.